Some issue. Okay, I don't know what the issue is, but all right. Hey, Eddie.
I just had to turn my
So
computer on and off. Pause.
there you go. That's the oldest and the best trick.
IT, hey?
Back to my IT support days.
All right. So, hey, for the folks who are just tuning in to the live session, my name is Benjamin. I'm the CEO and founder of MyKicksters. I'm here with some awesome people to have a really good chat about what the F is happening in the healthcare. No, that's not the title, but that's what we're going to talk
Pretty good
about.
title.
uh, but look, if you're up to go grab a lunch or something, grab a cup of coffee or your lunch, and we'll have this. It's a casual chat, not heavy detail. This is not an educational content, so please don't bring your notepad and take notes. This is not about that session. What are we going to talk about? Look, this is not a surprise that healthcare is going under some tremendous stress and changes. Like, there is strikes around the corner. There is demand of workforce. There is shortages. Doctors and healthcare workers just burning out. The episode is getting darker and darker as the day goes, and there are a few people in the landscape that are doing something about it, and not because they're interested about it, because they don't have any other choice to disrupt the space. So I've brought about few of those people that are doing some amazing stuff in that space, in how healthcare staffing has been evolving. So, a quick intro. I'm not going to go type and glorify them in this session. You can go and check their LinkedIn's. They're amazing people. A quick intro. I've got Haley, founder of Hey Lucy, and that a platform that connects allied health workers on demand with shifts. I've got Serge, father of father of healthcare marketplaces, but what he does is he runs a really good platform called Locomate, which disrupted the pharma industry in a way, helping pharmacy connects with locums on demand. And I've got Dr. Anu here, someone who has been on the other side and really got the heat, and he removed his band-aid and said, "Look, this is it." Started StatDoc, a fast-growing disruptor in that space, connecting doctors on demand across Australia. And then we've got the real disruptor here, which happened to be the first piece of digital transformation in the space. Kopi launched Healthcare Connect, CEO and founder of Healthcare Link. um, Healthcare Link is essentially a LinkedIn for healthcare workers, and he has created this brand of the largest community of healthcare workers and connecting them with jobs and opportunities across the board. So I've got these minds doing different things in different spaces, as you could know by now. Feel go to check them on LinkedIn, please do, and check their websites. But this session is about a topic that I believe requires a conversation. So first off, I'm going to open up the floor. Like Harry, Saj, Anu, Copy, just jump in. What is the problem? Like, what is the actual problem in the healthcare industry? Like, everybody seems to say something, a version of something, and I don't really believe the media as much as I want to. But you are on the floor, you're doing things, and you're seeing the problem firsthand. What is the problem?
um, I guess I'll jump in, right? Was it my in 2020? My wife came home with smoke coming out of her ears, right, about the problem that she was facing in pharmacy at that stage. And it was, for me, if I kind of summarize it, it's just access to talent when you need it, right? Because healthcare goes up and down in terms of requirements and demand and so forth, right? Like every industry does, probably greatest impact. And you look back at how long that problem, I mean, I say, oh, I noticed the problem 5 years ago. Kopi noticed the problem way before then, right? So it's a forever problem that we've faced. We've just had different ways of addressing it through that time. And as that implementation of those changes have been happening, the requirements of the workforce are changing, right? Like you see the new generation and their requirements of what people required 5, 10 years ago is completely different again. So the landscape keeps changing from both sides.
Um, I'm just going to take, thanks for sharing that, but I'm going to call, because, Kopi, you had healthcare link way before the other guest here. Um, what did you see, 10 years back, and what made you start healthcare link? What was that problem statement that you had when you wanted to start healthcare link?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. I was going to start up by that. Basically, 10 years ago, my brother is a cardiologist doctor who lives in Darwin, associated with a lot of medical centers. It was started from a dinner table conversation. He came for a visit to Sydney and said, Kopi, I'm really struggling to find GPs and doctors to come to that part of the remote world. Can you help me out? You seem like a tech guy who knows connections. And I said, yeah, come on, put a job ad on Seek, or come on, there's something there. But the problem is not just putting a job ad; it's about where the doctors goes, where which channels they going to be at, and then reaching to them, and also then there's a problem about not attraction. It's about compliancing regulations around matching a doctor to a practice. So. I thought I could solve that problem for him by putting up add-on platforms, but it didn't help. So then there's a attraction problem. So what we did was we wanted to create a centralized platform where that platform has a lot of channels where doctors go, conferences, educational institution, or anywhere they go, we can attract them and channel them through a platform where we can give these practices a way to attract these doctors easily. That will reduce the cost of recruitment, the time to hire. So at that time, 10 years ago, the problem is about attraction. How can I get my job to know to wider audience of doctors? So I wanted to solve that problem by creating a marketplace to get those doctors to know where the jobs are, or the nurses. But now, in 10 years into it, there's people. My brother wants a doctor for tomorrow, or they want, attraction is a problem still there, but it's more the on-demand talent, right? So we've seen this need for this. How can I find a doctor for tomorrow to come and fill a shift that a doctor cancel, and that. So that problem is the one that is actually needed now to be solved, and that's why we got these amazing founders. Each of them kind of doing their own bit in their own vertical, and Serge got an amazing technology that he used to solve in a pharmacy industry. So I'm really excited to just work with this bunch of group to give my learnings and give my reach that I have to solve this problem for the sector. So I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, and I think
we
lost Benji, but let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah. I would like to just add a little bit from the healthcare professional side, which I think both Serge and Kopi have talked about, kind of filling shifts for the healthcare facilities. But more and more health professionals are wanting the flexible work hours, the higher pay, the more control over their work life. And I think across all healthcare professional sectors, working full-time careers is becoming harder and harder, and it's becoming less what people want, particularly younger and younger. And so there's a huge shift. I don't know too much about the other sectors, but I know in the medical sector, we're seeing about 10% of shifts done by locums in about 2020. And it looks like it's going to be up to about 15% in the next 5 years. So that's a huge growth in the healthcare workforce wanting this on-demand staffing, doing part-time kind of salaried work, and then trying to do part-time locum work or travel work. And people are having children later. So the whole work ethos around healthcare is less, die on the job, and more enjoy the job and find some value, which I think all of our platforms are allowing.
I think as well, if I think back to 10 years ago, or even further than that when I graduated, it just was that you just found a full-time job. There was almost no discussion around there being other options. This is way pre-COVID, obviously. And you just got a job. You were full-time. You saw, in my industry, up to 20 patients a day, and it just was what it was. There seemed to be no other option that I was aware of, or conversations that were occurring differently. I know we used to talk about in my industry about a 7-year itch. By about the 5 to 7 year mark, most of us were becoming quite disillusioned. Didn't really recognize back at that point that it was actually most likely burnout and a few other things that were going on for our well-being. and they would leave the industry. They just would go back to uni, get another job, and think, oh, well, I didn't like that job. But I find interesting now when I teach the students, because I'm still involved in teaching, when the job ads go up now at the end of the year, none of them want a full-time job.
Yeah.
None of them. I'll say, what about this wonderful job? These are really great employers. And they go, oh, I only really want 2 days a week. And I'm like, A, how can you fund that? They're probably still living at home because they can't afford housing. I think that's something that we need is in the issue as well. But also there is, like, after COVID, the conversations of, well, how do you want to work? Do you want to work in a different way? Do you want some more freedom? Do you want to be less tied in? It all of a sudden became a conversation that was okay to have.
Yeah.
And as you said, Serge, the younger population are embracing that. But then as a clinic owner, as I've experienced, our clinic structure isn't evolved to take that on board just yet. We need full-time employees. We need someone to cover a 5-day diary. So the clinic model and probably the perceptives of some of our younger staff members isn't quite lining up yet. But yeah, lots of changes from a practitioner point of view.
And that's not just an Australian problem, that's a global, right? We did a lot of market research, both locally and overseas. And after having deployed in the US, the conversations we had, it's the same conversation. And I know my wife's pharmacy, the person that finished the internship only wanted 2 to 3 days after that, right? I've spoken to many healthcare owners where they're now like, okay, we need to embrace this. And I'm actually, instead of having 1 full-timer, I'm going to have 3 part-timers.
Exactly.
Right? Like you need to be able to offer that flexibility back to your workers. And then, and depending on what type of site, multi-site and whatnot, then you can utilize them across the board and give them the flexibility that they want, right? And employers also need to embrace it. That's the key, right? You can't have one, it's two-sided. There's the workers and the employers. Workers are definitely making their feelings heard, right? And the employers now need to embrace that or struggle with the workforce shortage that's out there.
And that's definitely what we're seeing in our sector. Oh, sorry, Hayley, you go.
No, you go, Anu.
I was just saying that's what we see very much in our sector in the healthcare. We sell very much into kind of tertiary hospitals. And so it's the legacy systems there and the ability to be malleable and change the structure is just so inbuilt into their systems that it's just such a grind for us. Most of our value has come in kind of privatized GP clinics or private hospitals where they're just like, oh yeah, we'll start onboarding these doctors in the next couple of weeks. But like in the healthcare sector, it's like, it's been 1 year, we're still in discussions. They need to wait for this policymaker, this stakeholder, and then it goes up to Vic Health, who goes, oh no, we've got a 10-year plan to change workforce. And it's like, well, you can keep being understaffed then. Yeah.
I mean, it's like the way the world's moving, it's not being supported by the government. And I know, Benji's been one of the very vocal about this, about policies needing to keep up with the way things work. Like, and I 100% agree. You go to an organization and say, hey, you're spending X millions of dollars on fees of just management of staff. We can reduce that by 25%. Oh, that's great, but we don't want to change. Like it's mind-boggling, right? When you have that conversation. And I agree, smaller, more privatized employers tend to move quicker in their decision-making. So it's just kind of like you kind of go with the early adopters first while you wait for the laggards to catch up. They will eventually catch up. It just takes time.
I think so. I think what Anna said is correct. I think the problems, right, when you ask hospitals, larger hospitals where Anna works, they have resources to attract these talents, whether for a permanent role or a locum role, and they have different problems. Whereas clinics like where Hayley is working, they want to have on-demand talent. They want to have a permanent recruitment. They want to have different kind of workers, but they don't have resources to do it. Like, they had to always rely on recruitment agencies, right? They don't have time. So that's why, like, these kind of platforms, what we are trying to come up with is kind of be very useful for those smaller practice owners. We have time poor. They don't even have an internal talent HR or a process even, right, to manage these workers of dynamic changing environments. So definitely the clinics are probably the best to sort of get them to try something first and eventually lobbying the government or the New South Wales Health to sort of, okay, now it's working for the smaller players. Now can you invest in this to make it happen for the bigger hospital, which is Anu is working on that at the moment. So,
Welcome back, Benji.
Yeah. How good is this?
We
The
don't need
host
you.
came-
We don't need you here. That's what we've decided.
Thank you.
We're sitting in silence, mate. Waiting for you. So help us.
Looks like LinkedIn ditched us at the last minute. The link is broken to LinkedIn, but we are live on YouTube, and I just wanted to see if I could troubleshoot. But I thought, you know what? I've just put the YouTube link on LinkedIn for now, and we'll have the recording. So if you're missing it on LinkedIn, sorry, folks, complain to LinkedIn.
I have a question for Anu and Haley. So I'll ask, Ben? Basically,
yes,
because
please,
they both
please.
worked as a locum or casual for agencies in their career. So what are the challenges that you find in working with agencies? Obviously multiple agencies calling you day in, day out and onboarding to create shift. But how do you think these kind of new platforms can help to solve that problem?
I can talk from my experience. The couple of things that bothered me the most was lack of transparency and visibility. So in terms of signing up with an agency, it's all behind emails and within their hands. So there was no way I could see what jobs they actually had there. They would offer me a position somewhere and I'll go, sure, I'll take it. But I have no idea whether there were 5 other ones that I would have preferred because I can't see. The second part that bothered me the most was the lack of transparency around money. And it's often, Anu, you'd probably remember, like you're having morning tea or something in a hospital and locums start talking about what you're potentially earning, even though you're not supposed to talk about it. And then if you ever caught whiff of how much the agency is actually charging the hospital per hour, and you know what you're getting paid, there's quite a big discrepancy. So I was quite upset about that. And having been a clinic owner myself, I thought, man, they're just having a lend at this point, because as a small business owner, it felt like your hand's never not going to your pocket paying some sort of fee. And then to get talent, you're also paying an exorbitant fee on top, which I thought was quite unfair. So for me, they were the things that I think our platforms create. Way more transparency. It puts the power back in both the clinicians and the clinic's hand to see what they want to pay, what people will work for. And just a fairer system. So that's where I came to. Anu?
Yeah, I think for me, it was one of the words Haley said, which is it's all about power. So it's where does the power of the decision, power of the recruitment, power of the costings lie? And for me, in the traditional locum system, the agency has all the power. They have control over all the supply of the shifts, and they have control over all the supply of the doctors. And so therefore, they have all the control. They can put their commissions to what they want. They can negotiate what they want. They charge what they want, and they give the doctors like whatever. And so for me, there were 2 big problems I had. One was I was locumed out to a shift that I was very much not skilled enough for. So I was a very junior doctor. I got convinced by my agent that it would be okay. I was a solo doctor in a night hospital that I probably only now as a 7th year doctor would feel comfortable working, but as a 3rd year doctor, well outside my scope. And when I put that information into the agency, they said, no, we've had lots of 3rd year doctors work. Like, if you're a good 3rd year doctor, you'll be good. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, if they say so, they would. And I got to the hospital. I was the only doctor there. And they were like, oh, you're only a 3rd year? We usually have like ED registrars working this shift. And I kind of sat there. It was one of the worst 3 days of my life. And there was just no accountability on the agency there. It was my medical degree on the line if a patient gets unwell or something goes wrong. And so that was the first part. And then the second part was I was threatened with legal action by one of my locum agencies in 2021 because I broke their lock-in contract period. So I locumed at a hospital. 7 months later, the hospital called me directly and said, hey, we've got 3 months of work. Will you come work? It was in rural Victoria. I said, well, actually, I want 6 months of work. I'm going to travel that far. I want this addition of accommodation. I want travel covered. I want higher rates. So they said, yeah, we'll do it all. So I signed the contract directly with the hospital. Then the agency found out 3 weeks later, threatened the hospital with legal action. They said, no, we're not doing anything. Threatened me with legal action. I said, no, we're not doing anything. And then they took it above the hospital's head to like the head of the hospital. and I ended up having to continue to work through my agency and lost all my perks. And so this agency who had initially said, yeah, we're your best friend, we will work for you, ended up becoming like my enemy and cost me quite a bit of money.
And that story is across all verticals.
Yeah.
We've had the same stories in pharmacy, pharmacists, going in and having to work a shift where they were not prepared for, working by themselves. And then the control element, like that's my biggest bugbear of this whole process. No one solely should control access to talent, right? That's my motto. Talent should be open and accessible across the board. And the holdover talent and forcing people to do certain things when you're not doing right by the locum and the customer. Because hang on, what is the outcome that needs to be addressed here? It's serving patients.
Exactly.
In the community.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And profits over that is just really not the right way to do it. Like we recently had a deployment where, the customer utilized the platform, started owning the talent. And then the agency's response was, we'll half our rates.
There you go.
Within 2 months. And you're like, hang on, what were you doing before then, right? Like, it really, don't get me wrong. I think agencies will still play a very important role in this process, right? There are a definite requirement for agencies as part of talent attraction. But to your point, Anu, you can't just control everything.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's what you're saying about commissions is really interesting. It's the same in the medical space. So in the height of COVID, commissions were 25% on average. Now they're 12.5%. Because there's so much competition, they've suddenly just dropped them. And if you go to the UK, the average medical locum agency charges 5%. Because there's platforms like ours that compete against them, that team up NHS trusts together. And so you think, what are your actual margins that you're making here, and why do they need to be so much? Yeah, and a lot of the us coming in, but there's also some digital agencies that are trying to kind of streamline the process, are all adding some competition into the space, which I think is so necessary because, as you were saying, it's all about the patient, right? Like the number of hospitals I've worked at that say we can't hold a full-time doctor, we have to be fully reliant on locums. But then I'd go there and I'd be the only locum because they don't have the budget to hire anyone else. And so it's a vicious cycle because no full-time doctor ever wants to take that. I was saying like 20 patients a day in an emergency department that can't hold a full-time doctor, yet are paying me 3 times more than a full-time doctor. And the cycle just continues because the work just gets harder and harder. So these hospitals are struggling, and private clinics, and across all verticals.
And the incentives piece, right? Like one of the things that we discovered was the rate of a locum was being dictated by the agency. So if you're not willing to pay X amount, we won't help you. Now, there's 2 elements to that because that makes the commission higher, right? So it's like, how do you not standardize, but like for the right skill sets, you pay the right amount. And so you can't just approach a flat line. Everything must be at this rate purely because that impacts the commission, right? And what we found was by kind of giving the transparency into all of that, people still got paid what they were worth in their skill sets, but it allowed more budget for the employer to actually have more flexibility in offering more shifts to more people, which they didn't have before because all the other costs were tied up in this archaic processes.
Correct. Anu, you mentioned in the UK the locum rates has come down to even 5%, which is a good one because 10 years ago I started seeing these platforms pop up in UK, but not in Australia.
Yeah.
And I was really interested in what was happening, and I was strongly following those things. But I was hoping someone will do it in Australia, but no one kind of did it. I don't know. Then I was curious, what stopped people from doing this? I mean, obviously, technology is not a big deal here. It's just that mindset of making this happen and disrupt the agencies. What do you think is actually stop people from trying this 10 years ago? So if you started 10 years ago, it would have been, now it'll be 5%, or it would have been more competitive. And the second question to you, why do you think it's now is the right time for you guys to do this right now? And then I hope that you don't face the same challenge. What the challenge?
So when we're actually not, StatDoctor's not the first locum marketplace that's tried to be built in Australia for the medical sector. There was another one in 2018. The problem with Australian healthcare is it's so fragmented in the tertiary sector. So every hospital, particularly if we look at Victoria, every hospital actually works as an individual company. There's no partnerships, there's no teamwork. They re-credential. So I've worked at 22 hospitals in Victoria. I've been re-credentialed 22 times, which means 22 paperworks I've had to submit, 22 my poor references get called so bloody often. Whereas in the NHS, because it's all under the NHS umbrella, if you're a doctor in the NHS, you're a doctor across everywhere. So it's so much easier to link hospitals and healthcare sectors together. So I think it's much harder in Australia, and we have done quite well in the Victorian market by trying to bring hospitals together. And then recently we tried to expand to Queensland Health, and we just hit a complete roadblock because Queensland Health in itself was a real troubled place. So we teamed up with a couple of health services. They loved our platform, started using us. I even went over personally to go and work. But even though Queensland Health has an umbrella over all Queensland hospitals, each health service still has to have individual credentials. So I got approved for credentialing at one and then didn't get approved for another one because the documentation was different. And they're literally like 2 hours apart. And this was a health service that said they were like code yellow, didn't have a doctor, about to close a hospital, so sort of bad. So I think there's just that fragmentation is so hard to fix, and I don't think it's an easy fix. I think that's probably why we've had a lot of struggle trying to build this platform. But I also think it's the right time because we've hit the edge where we're so in so much trouble. I think if we continue like we will, in about 2 or 3 years, we'll be worse than the NHS, and we'll have doctors leaving here to go elsewhere. So unless we do something now, our workforce is really going to struggle.
Can I it seems like this problem has been there for a decade and growing and becoming more painful. I don't know the clinical way of calling a disease like this, but it seems like it's been left untreated for a long time. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like what you guys are building, right? But yes, you're bringing in some efficiency to the process that's broken, transparency to a system that is hidden, ownership, and the power of decisions to the right people. And yes, there seems like the timing is now because I do believe that the future of work has changed a lot in the last 5 years, opposed to what happened 10 years ago. So, but the question I have is, what makes you stand for the future differently? Today, I'm okay. Today, yes. My question is, where is this leading to? Like, what's the future of each of your platforms, or what's the future of this whole distributed, non-traditional, on-demand, fractional kind of access to work? Should we expect 10 more companies to come into the sector? Should we expect what should happen? What are your foresights?
From our perspective, so we launched a marketplace as our version 1. And my view was that as we grew, the bigger we got, we're becoming an agency with an app, really, because we want to own that flow. Yeah. Right? Don't go to come to us. And then we took a step back and said, how do we holistically solve this problem? Because the talent can be internal, talent can be within the internal network, talent can be in a marketplace, talent can be in an agency, and talent sits somewhere you don't even know. How do you allow tapping into that? Right? So we approached it from a technology perspective. So we kind of made the decision we're a technology provider, not a marketplace. So we took a step back and we started developing the platform in a holistic manner where the company, the product, will allow access to internal talent, external talent, marketplace talent, whether it is one marketplace or multiple marketplaces. In fact, the next wave is more marketplaces will pop up, right, in each of these verticals. Then it becomes kind of an agency thing, within the marketplace has to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper in order to compete. And then you've got the agencies. So we took the approach that as a healthcare organization, I should be able to, with a click of a button, go to my internal talent, go to my network, go to a marketplace or multiple marketplaces and multiple agencies in the one workflow. So that's what we're building, and we feel the future is platforms that allow access to multiple pools of talent. I've kind of seen this evolve. I've worked for companies like PageUp, which did applicant tracking systems. Then they built onboarding modules. I've worked for Workday, which is the whole HR hire to retire process. So I've seen it from a lens of all these different organizations and how they utilize it. And then there's a big gap between internal and going external, which is where we fit in, right? And when you go external, you don't want an organization to pick and choose, oh my God, I have to sign into like 5 marketplaces to post a shift, right? Because just like they do today, they go to 5 agencies on a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we took the approach that as a platform, if we can allow and be that aggregator, and if a healthcare organization wants a doctor, we can go to Anu's platform. If they want a podiatrist, I can go to Haley's platform. If I need other allied health risks, I can go to Copy's platform. That's where we feel kind of we're building towards at the moment. And then that's why we partner with organizations to help them roll that out.
And from our perspective, it's a good one. So Serge is coming from a organization angle where he's solving the problem of accessing talent from different layers. Where what we are doing on the other side, where we want the talent to see what are the opportunities out there for me to be part of. Is it a locum platform or a locum agency or directly working with a hospital, or I want to work directly to a patient. Or I want to work in a Central Coast or even Cairns in this time frame. So I want to have access to all the opportunities through a single view, a single platform. But they have the control of choosing where they want to work or which app to use. But again, to Anu's problem, I don't want the worker to go and do 42 times credential in every places, right, where they want to have the choice. So in an ideal world, we are solving the first part where I want to show them the opportunities out there. And in a longer term, I want to solve the problem that Anu mentioned about reducing the friction in getting that job done and serving the patient. So I think I'm solving the first part, but I need your help to get there, the last part, the vision, the long-term vision. Over to you, Ben.
Kobe, but
Benji, I'll just add in there. I think, in terms of the future and where we're heading, I think we've got like lots of tech solutions. And then the bit that keeps me awake at night, or the part that I just assume we're going in the right direction, Serge, because there are parts of the workforce that are not currently being mobilized. And we know the health needs are there and increasing with chronic disease burden. But there are people like me, pods and physios, etc., in allied health who aren't working and we could mobilize if they had the opportunity. So even just speaking from a female perspective, I have 3 children, so I've kind of exited and come in and out of the workforce as required with my children. There would have been so many times where I could have just worked a 1-2 day week if I knew where the shifts were, if I could grab them quickly to work around my family. So even just from a planning perspective, there are people like me out there that aren't being utilized in the workforce that we can perhaps re-enter the workforce in this way. There would be people who are disillusioned. I know a lot of my new grads out there working who have been working and maybe having a work break because they're like, I don't know if this is for me. I'm feeling burnt out. Like you said, giving them other opportunities that they might be able to see that maybe pediatrics wasn't for me, but maybe aged care will be, or rehab. So I think giving practitioners more opportunity to try things is really important because they might stay interested in their profession longer and engaged. And giving them different ways to work, like we've talked about, might re-engage those of us who are there but not being fully utilised. Or going rural, taking a holiday with your family and working a few days a week while you're there. I think if we shared the workforce better through these platforms like we can, there might be more bodies on the ground to do the work. That's what I hope for, future-wise. Yeah.
It's just amazing the type of opportunities out there. Like, I worked a shift a couple of days ago through our platform, which was an occupational health shift. Never thought I'd do one before, but this is a company that goes in and does workplace physicals for large companies. And this small company, it was amazing. I saw 10 patients over 8 hours. I got paid really well, and all I did was listen to some heart and lungs. But it was an opportunity. They said they've been looking for doctors for the last 1.5 years, and they have so many companies that want to use their service, but they don't have the doctors to do it. And so they can't scale their own company. And then here I am thinking, you're only looking for doctors for PGY 4 above. It's 1 day in a year, maybe. You get paid really well. Like, there's just so many opportunities out there that technology now is able to make that so easy to find.
Yeah, imagine wanting to go on a holiday and say I need to pick up a few extra shifts
Yeah.
to be able to just fund that holiday, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's that,
or even being on holiday. You can be on holiday and then be in Brisbane or on the Gold Coast with your family, and then you just work a shift, make enough to cover your rent for the week. It's just there's so many opportunities.
We've had so many instances of that where people have gone and done the interstate locum shift.
Yeah.
Accommodations provided. Take the family. They're on a holiday, and in between, right? But I knew you made a very good point about that credentialing piece, right? So the US has a problem where every state is different. And working with the American Pharmacy Association, they've got a company called Pharmacy Profiles that does that behind the scene to try to aggregate all that data into a centralized platform.
Nice.
It's a huge piece of work, right? And that's a piece that needs to be solved in Australia, like a digital wallet of credentialing to walk around with, and then that should be accepted by everyone. Now, it's probably simpler to build that platform than it is to get it accepted by places, right? So there's a bit of work that needs to be done there. But yeah, like that piece is just as important to allow that flexibility, I feel, in the future. But yeah, there's a bit of work, and I always see technology, right? So I've been in technology for 2 decades now, and you always see it go. And unfortunately, we like to think in Australia like we're leading it. We're not. I see the cycle go from US, Europe, Asia down to Australia, and that's the flow of change I see in a lot of things. And having worked at the tech companies, they always went into that path. So there's a bit of work we need to do culturally as well to adopt things newer. I know when I talked about our platform, the US was ready to adopt quicker than Australia was, right? Because in Australia, it was like, oh, I don't know if that will work. In the US, though, that could potentially work.
Yeah.
Like just the mind frame shift is different. And I think as we get new leaders into organizations and the new wave of innovative thinkers, that should change for the better. And our solutions will evolve and support that in a better way as well.
Can I just quickly touch on the credentialing? Benji, sorry, I know you've been trying to speak so much. I just have another thing to add on the credentialing. People have solved the credentialing. There's at least 20 startups that I can think of that have credentialing solutions. The problem is, particularly in the medical sector, every hospital wants their credentialing criteria to be the gold standard. Then on top of that, every state wants their credentialing criteria to be the gold standard. And then the federal government does this and doesn't look anywhere. So New South Wales Health at the moment is building a similar kind of marketplace to try and help their locum staffing. And they've essentially said, we want this platform to be adopted further outside. And they've made all New South Wales Health hospitals get involved. And we're working with them to see if there's an opportunity for Stat Doctor. But as soon as we went and said, oh, this is what we're doing with New South Wales Health to Queensland Health, they just said, no, we're not interested. That's New South Wales Health. It's as though we've got 7-8 different countries in one country. It is just so ludicrous.
Rural versus metro is different too. So if I go to a rural hospital, I have to put in all my credentialing. And it's literally paperwork via email. Like I'm handwriting and filling in the PDFs that they want and having to take a photo and email it back to them so that the person who does the credentialing can tick the boxes. But then if I go to a metro hospital, it's completely different. They're similar but require slightly different things. And you're doing it again, and that's just going in one state between 2 different areas. It's crazy. It really is.
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't want to really break that momentum, but I do wanted to, throw a curveball at that conversation because, look, I understand the problem that you guys are solving and the inefficiencies that are there in the system, but as a platform builder, as a founder of a platform builder, you have your own challenges. Like I wanted to go into that a little bit because I can start listing down the challenges, but starting from regulations, legal, are you considered labor hire? What happens to the employee benefits, superannuation? The law itself is not truly defined yet for independent workers, and I think ATO sees them as sole traders. Fair Work, I don't care. Like that's not what I say, but I'm not sure what they have in position. But you are building something disruptive in an already chaotic world. Which means it's not like you don't have a straightforward legislation to follow. You don't have a straightforward payment system to follow. You don't have verification system like credentialing to follow. As a marketplace and a platform builder, what are some of the key challenges that you're currently facing? And you are asking, these are the challenges that are happening to you, and how do you like the world to see that and solve it for you?
I'll lead because I've had many discussions with lawyers about this. So, like, just something as simple as we wanted to do pay next day, right? Immediate payment of someone before we get paid via the platform, right? Labour Hire puts their hand up and says, no, you're a recruitment agency now and you must pay payroll tax and all of this stuff. I'm like, all we're doing is enabling for them to get paid earlier. And then they say, oh, well, you're controlling money. We're like, we're doing the opposite. We have less control because they've already been paid, right? That's just a basic example. And there's like so many grey areas for employment. When they started enforcing the super payments for sole traders that need to go direct, right? So then it was always the law, but they never enforced it. And they started enforcing it. But payroll systems can't support it because you got a contractor who's not an employee, but now you must add them as an employee to become a headache, right? Like, so all these challenges that are born out of that process. And then there's all these trigger points of what classifies someone as an employee, not an employee. That this is a grey box, and we depends how far you are into that grey box can put you into different areas, right? And then you combine on top of that, now you're collecting sensitive data on the platform around credentialing. So what are your security protocols and certifications? And then now everyone's looking at AI and how AI automates. Well, hang on, who owns the ethical, legal compliance of AI into that mix? So it's a real nice box of decisions that aren't very clear to make.
I agree.
Yeah, I
I've
think
had lots
that
of queries around super and GST. Like,
Yeah.
everyone asks about, well, what do you mean about the super? What do I need to do? I think it's probably nice to know that no one really is uber clear, and people are still bringing the same questions in, because as a clinic owner, I had the same questions, and now running our platform, I somewhat have the same questions, and then I'm getting the same questions from locums. I think another thing that is a slight hurdle, having a platform surge, I know we've talked about this a little bit before, and it's probably slightly niche, but it's sort of a problem. In the private allied health space, you have to have a provider number which follows your locations. So if I pick up a shift tomorrow, I need to apply for a provider number at that location, which you can actually do quite easily now through an online platform. It gives you one straight away. But the second tier of the problem is that you can't add it to your HiCaps machine without a couple of week delay. So as the clinic, they receive the piece of paper with the provider number on it from the practitioner who's turning up tomorrow, but there's no way to claim against it. So it's just one of those sort of lots of platforms need to talk to each other, is what I've told.
Well, I mean, I remember
between the companies, the insurers.
When you asked the question, Hayley, and I kind of said, oh, easy integration, right? So we want to talk to HiCaps and about the integration process, because we're like, we'll just build it. Someone accepts a shift, automatically create a provider number, automatically put them into the system. Even if it's tomorrow, they'll be there today. They're like, none of those integrations are supported, right? I'm like, why not? They're like, oh, it's just, so sometimes I feel we're like trying to push the boundaries of existing systems, and this applies to everything, like everything. We're pushing the boundaries, and it's just not keeping up. And unfortunately, there's no incentive for them to change, right? So they just stay as is, right? Like, so I still remember that conversation, because in my mind, I'm like, that's an easy fix. Integration in and out, solved.
The amount of queries from the poor clinics who then ring me and say, but how do I do this for tomorrow. And I'm like, honestly, there's probably the way that just don't record that I'm telling you, because I know what happens out in the real world, but then there's the possibly the legal way that you're supposed to do it. No one really knows, because it's just a pickle that no one's solved. But yeah, that's another problem that tech, I think, could solve.
It seems like now you're all in this world of two-sided marketplace where you have to go down and solve both of their problems, and you're not obligated to do it because you are the marketplace. And one side, you have to go make the clinics and the healthcare institutions to adopt and then make it efficient and make it less expensive and compliant and yada yada, the whole bunch of stuff. But I do believe, and I'm happy to get your thoughts on this, is there's a big awareness and education and enablement to all the locums out there, because look, in our world of MyGeeksters for the last few years, we've been dealing with hundreds and hundreds of sole traders, and I know by fact that at least 8 out of 10 of them really don't understand what sole trading means. And till today, I get questions like, "Do I need an ABN to do this? Like, should I have a GST?" Like, now, not that I'm going to say that the healthcare people are not dumb with it, not the best people with this, but how are you facing this challenge, and what is your platform doing in order to enable these workers to know what it is and make their life easier? What are you doing?
From our point of view, we're still quite early stage. So a lot of what we do is a lot of manual education. So everyone who comes onto the platform, we kind of do a little bit of tailored hand holding. And that's probably because most doctors who have been with an agency previously are used to that hand holding, and we're trying to make the transition to being independent a little bit easier. The process to get an ABN is so simple and easy, yet a lot of people don't realize how easy that is. And particularly when you're a locum doctor, when you're putting in, like, there's like a part of the process where you have to put in what type of staffing you is. There's no option for locum doctor. So you have to say, I'm a part-time specialist, sometimes specializing across Australia. It's so confusing. And then another thing that we do is, and we haven't kind of integrated a lot of additional third parties yet, and we will be doing that. We do independent invoicing. So I work with them on how to invoice the hospital as an independent sole trader and how to work through those financials. But we do a lot of it manually at the moment, but certainly we'll be adding more technology to our platform.
And yes,
the risk is in what way you provide the advice as well, right? Because there's legalities around the education / advice as well. We always, I'll use the example. So when we onboard a user, they mark if they're with their company details, GST details or not. And then after a shift, we do the automated invoicing piece, right? So what happens is people used to go in, and after we've verified their profile, go and try to tick the GST box, because they thought I could earn an extra 10%, right? So there is a lot of education to do there, and we built a flag. As soon as someone touched the GST, it will flag my support team, and they'll know that someone's trying to change their GST. And hey, you're not registered for GST, you can't claim GST. They're like, oh, what if I change my mind down in the future? Well, it's from that point in time. But like I had a chat to there's providers like Henry, right? I think everyone's heard of Henry. They do education, and they've got accountants that can help them with that sort of stuff. So we need to be also, like, once again, from the compliance perspective, how much we can and say of advice versus what then falls out of our expertise and remit, which could be a liability for us as an organization as well. So that also needs to be treated with care about how much we go educate and point to the right resources. So we've got a link, you don't have an ABN, click here, and it takes them to the government website, right? So we kind of try to stay hands off. And then they'll come back and say, oh, which selection do I make when I'm applying for my ABN? You talk to your accountant, right? We can't tell you. We know what 99% of locals need to select, but we can't tell you, right? Like, that's a liability. So as providers, we also need to be careful of not getting ourselves in trouble by, even though we're trying to do the right thing and give them all the right answers, it can be a liability for us.
A really I think a really basic piece of education that I've come across, Benji, and it might have been when I first started working with yourself, and I think you might have made the query of kind of what's a locum, or what does the term actually locum mean? And it is interesting. I'm not pointing you out for any other reason than that exists in my world too. So if I talk to some other practitioners about being a locum, sometimes they're not quite clear. They're like, do you mean a casual worker? And I'm like, yeah, kind of, on demand. Because locum in medical world has been used for quite a long time as far as I'm aware. So it was familiar to me, but it's not always familiar in allied health. And so it's been dawning on me that some of our marketing actually just needs to be around, do you have a Wednesday free? You could be a locum. It's more about having a flexible, opportunistic work-life balance. It's not about being something different. You're not a locum or a doctor. You can be a locum doctor sometimes if you wish to. So it's more about that sort of choice, and probably educating on what a locum is at the end of the day to back to clinicians that have been clinicians for a long time and wondering what it is. Yeah.
Ken, I'm gonna just take that a little bit deeper, right? Because as much as I see independent works brings flexibility, ownership and more control and better rates, and I do also see that world is not always great as it sounds, because you are now in a zone of inconsistency, instability. All days are not good days. Some days, you get a shift. Some days you don't get a shift. And how this takes it to the part of financial security and mental health in a way. What are your thoughts around, let's say, 5 years down the lane, you guys are all, big marketplaces and transacting a lot of these workforce and helping the healthcare as a whole. And then, which means you're normalizing locum as a significant portion of the workforce. Now, there's a saying, right? You solve a problem. By solving a problem, you create another problem, which now you have to solve. And I feel the problem would be is now you've created a workforce that likes the type of work, and now they have other set of problems, which is, how do I manage my finances? And how do I know when do I get paid? And what are your thoughts? How are you getting prepared to that world? Because you're going to go there inevitably, but how are you getting prepared?
I think I'll just start with, for doctors. Doctors are notoriously bad with money. So a lot of doctors, particularly junior doctors, find the locum world really exciting. They're making 3 times more, sometimes $200, $300 an hour shifts. They're making, $300,000, $400,000 in the year, but they don't really have good financial acumen. They don't realize it's all pre-tax money. They don't save well, and then tax time comes and they have sometimes a 6-figure tax bill, and then they get on a payment plan with the ATO or something like that, and then it's just a grind to catch up. And then they often find themselves unable to get back into full-time work because their income cuts in half and they get trapped in this locum cycle. And I've seen it a few too many times, unfortunately, and that's what a lot of the kind of work we try and do with the doctors is trying to educate them, and with Henry and you guys as well, on kind of financial acumen of the locum space. And yes, it looks really good on paper, but you need to really know what you're buying into. It's pre-tax money, and that's really important to be aware of. In terms of future problems, definitely. I think the healthcare workforce is going to flexibility. If you look at any other industry, there's so much more flexibility than that has ever existed in being a doctor. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is, the healthcare system has to adapt, and it'll be forced to adapt unless it adapts on its own. So like surgical training at the moment, you get 9 years to do sometimes 5 or 6 years worth of work. But if you take a year for pregnancy or you take a year off, that counts into your 9 years. So there's just really bad things in place which pushes people towards different careers. So that's why a lot of women don't go into surgical training, particularly if they're in the time of life where they're looking at having children. But then somewhere like ED and GP have adapted and said, you know what, if you take years off to get pregnant, or you want to take years off for your mental health, we encourage that. and you can add that on. So you get 5 years to do 12 years, 12 years to do 5 years worth of training, but you have more flexibility. And then they're even offering like half time or 0.8 to do all of that training. And that's only come in the last 4 or 5 years. And that flexibility needs to be pushed in the next kind of 5 or 10 years to being across the board. And there's a lot of concern that, if you don't do all your 5 trainings, is the surgeon going to be as skilled as they were? Do they need to? And I think it's about trying to build some evidence around, a burnt out surgeon who's killed themselves 100 hours a week for 5 years is not a better surgeon than someone who's done half time with good work-life balance, has a healthy career outside, or a healthy life outside with family, kids, etc., is a better surgeon and offers more lifetime value for the surgical career and the healthcare sector than someone who works for a few years, gets burnt out, and then changes career or does something else. And so I think trying to change that mind shift is something that needs to occur and hopefully will occur. And in medicine in particular, it's just so bad.
Yeah, and I would take it as, yes, you could say you're creating a problem with this huge groups of people with that one on-demand workforce, on-demand work. I would say we're future-proofing it, right? Because it's shifting. It is shifting. So we're future-proofing tomorrow's workforce, right? That's actually our slogan. So
I'm going to say that.
Yeah. We're future-proofing tomorrow's workforce through the platform because that's where everyone's heading, right? I mean, we touched on it before. There's a huge dropout across all allied health verticals of interns not wanting to go into full-time work because they're like, I don't get the flexibility. I don't see myself in a hospital or in a pharmacy or in a clinic 5-6 days a week, right? That's not for me. So would you rather them leave and then have this continual huge workforce shortage problem forever? Or do you find a way to make it work for them to be in touch with it, right? So one of the things that we noticed early in our pharmacy days was people went into industry like sales reps, pharmaceutical industry. And then they're like, there's a platform that allows me to pick up a couple of shifts. I'll come back into community. So we're actually helping the workforce shortage problem because we can connect more people back into it. So I would say all of us are future-proofing it rather than creating a problem.
Yeah, I think one of the things we didn't cover, Ben, is maybe you had to create another LinkedIn Live for this session, telehealth. A lot of practitioners are now choosing to become on-demand telehealth employees. So we work with some of the larger telehealth to healthcare organizations where we are supplying our workforce who are interested in, not our workforce, our members, to join those telehealth platform and have some sort of flexible way of working. It's increasing. Like there's a lot of doctors putting their hand up, I want to do telehealth so I can work from home any whatever time that I want. I'm sure in allied health also is happening at the moment. So it's all changing. Now we need to make sure that we enable this kind of connection and visibility for doctors, that there's opportunity to do telehealth, opportunity to do locum, opportunity to do permanent work, flexibility. Yeah. So a lot of exciting things to come.
And I think as well, if we talk about from a clinic perspective, so in allied health, we tend to have a lot more small to medium-sized businesses, and it's pretty hard out there. Like the other day in clinic where I teach students, the 4 tutors that walked in and said, does anyone want to buy my business? And we all said no, because we've all been there. And because staffing has become so hard, people are giving up their businesses, they're selling. And in my industry, you could see it as a positive or a benefit, a positive or a negative. I think we're getting to the point where we might lose these boutique clinics, which is the industry. So if all the little physio clinics and podiatry clinics shut down, that's our primary healthcare link gone. It floods more into tertiary healthcare, which we know is problematic already. And it's a real problem. I sold my practice because I couldn't keep up with HR. I couldn't keep it fully staffed, and I was exhausted from doing all the shifts myself. So I think from a clinic perspective and from the staff, the places that need the staffing, we're future-proofing them because they need access to more staff and they currently don't have it. So it ends up they walk away. I've got a couple of friends who are actually just going to shut their doors. They're so over it. Despite how good they are as practitioners and what they're doing for the community, they just can't keep up. It's exhausting. So I think giving them solutions is super important. Others, we're going to lose whole chunks of the industry that just can't keep up. And it is the small to medium-sized businesses that are taking it pretty hard at the moment through staffing.
And that's a key point, Haley. Like, there's another element to this, especially with the private side. It's a business, right, as well. So they need to be sustainable, right? So they need cost-effective solutions. Because if the solution is not cost-effective, then they will close up shops, regardless of how easy it is to get talent. So there needs to be a balanced approach. And, you know, whilst we're all working on solutions to address that, we may not all have the right answers today, but it's about that evolution of it, and how we adapt as providers in those fields that we're in to go, can we notice the shift and can we adapt to the shift and support that shift, rather than go, no, it has to work this way or it won't work.
And that same issue between small to medium-sized businesses losing and having to shut down is the same thing between rural and remote Australia and metro. Those rural hospitals and healthcare facilities just cannot staff, or are having to staff with worse and worse doctors, and all that does is makes the healthcare of that community worse, which makes the demands higher, which just creates a further cyclical effect. And then, you know, one of the best parts about Australia is how big our land size is, and these small regional remote clinics that are staffed by 1 or 2 doctors 24/7, and they do amazing work, but then they get no time to take off, to go on holiday, because they can't find someone to come replace them. Even if it's for 1 or 2 weeks, we get a lot of kind of small regional clinics reach out to us and say, hey, we just want a GP for 1 or 2 weeks. We'll pay anything. We haven't been on a holiday in 3 or 4 years. You know, COVID happened, and now finally we can go. I want to take my husband, wife, you know, to the UK, but I can't leave my community without a doctor. That's like almost against the law now. So again, as Serge was saying, we're future-proofing, but also, you know, keeping these clinics alive, and that's just so important.
I remember being at a conference with Haley at the podiatry conference on the Gold Coast, and I spoke to these 2 clinic owners, and I said, "Oh, we don't really use locums because we don't need it." And the wife turned around and said, "It's because you don't have a way to get them, right?" And literally the week Hey Lucy launched, they posted how many shifts on the platform, Haley? Like,
10.
Yeah. So, because they now had an option to do so, right? So, and that's the impact that we want to make in every vertical that we can.
Yeah.
Lovely. Look, I know we can keep going on with this, but I do believe that this is a topic that has so much that we could uncover as it evolves through different industries. But I do want to call out that that instead of this having to be hostile and you're all in a way competition to each other, but you didn't. I saw that real good passion and purpose of solving the industry's problem. So, and I think hats off for you leading the change from not just you all have your own startups in a way, and I'm really encouraging to see how you see as a problem as together as opposed to individual companies. And I believe that's how the industry should evolve in many ways, because that's the right way to solve a problem. But also what I do want to call out is the insights that you bring to the table of lived experience, and of having to see both sides of the marketplaces and having to also see where technology can help, I believe is the biggest strength that you bring to this. And for those who are out there, listening to this, these are the guys you should talk to for digitally enabling your practices and digitally enabling your businesses. And don't get me wrong, I don't even also think labor hire agencies are your competitors. I think their days are coming to an end where they should now figure out how to transform their businesses. They should be calling you right now and saying they should be partnering with you in some shape or form to enable continuity of the business, because it is very evident that that industry is being shaken heavily, and the economics are driving towards the lower price. It's up to them, and they have to make the right calls. Now, someone who has been watching this industry span out, from this side, as an enabler or an infrastructure of marketplaces, healthcare is one domain that I have seen a significant shift in the last couple of years. And what traditionally used to be always thought that healthcare startups or health tech startups was selling into clinics, like, oh, dude, I don't know how you'll get a customer, because I come from healthcare background, and selling to hospitals or selling to healthcare institutes, like it's kind of the boring way to sell anything. But you taking that effort to go sell to the people that who are difficult to change by the ways of work, and you disrupting that space is a big piece of work. So you're already doing some awesome work there. I do think members who are watching this, or partners who are watching this, please do reach out, because the problem is not one-sided. The problem is multifaceted, because it's A, shortage, B, inefficiencies, C, collaboration and partnership driven, and it keeps on coming downstream all the way to, do doctors have insurance? Do doctors get loan? Like a locum, does a locum get a credit? I don't know. Like the problem keeps traveling down. So I believe the only way that the industry can get uplifted is everyone who's being around this industry has to contribute to solving this problem. Before I say thank you, is there any call out, anything that you would want to ask, that you want to share with the community, people who are listening? Is there anything in specific that you want to get in touch with? So please do. The stage is yours.
No, that's what you said in the last 1 minute is the right way to stop this, finish this amazing chat, is calling out all those players who are solving the individual problem to come together. Because when I created the Healthcare Link, it was to solve talent attraction and connection problem, but that connection problem led to me thinking there's so many. But yeah. I couldn't do it on my own, right? So I could only solve one part of the puzzle or the problem. Now it took 10 years to get here. But now I can see all these young entrepreneurs are doing different things, different problems. But if the whole industry can come together, and whoever wants to be part of this journey, I'm calling out, come and join, ping this on LinkedIn or something, have a conversation. Like, don't have to partner, just have a conversation and share the problem and collaborate how you can work potentially, and just leave it at that, see where the conversation take. So that's my ask.
I know when we first launched, agency said you're a competitor, and now we're deploying with them, right? Enabling them to transform their businesses and become marketplaces and offer something that's a bit different to what they used to, and disrupt themselves, right? Before you get disrupted by 10 other marketplaces. Yeah. So this is where the growth will be. People will be building marketplaces and so forth, right? So it's like looking at technology players out there and go, how can we use that to enable ourselves, rather than half your price and just try to do the same thing and kind of struggle that way. But from a founder's perspective, if there's people building businesses, thinking of ideas, and they want to reach out and just have a conversation, I think all of us have scars and war stories throughout the process, right? There are so many challenges, and I call it, I've had advice from many mentors and people. So if people just want to have a chat, happy to just have a chat.
Thanks, Gopi. Thanks, Saj.
I think from my point of view, healthcare needs so much disruption. It's not even funny. As a clinician who's worked in the industry for 7 years, and also a startup founder, and you've been part of multiple accelerators and quite in depth in the space of health tech, healthcare, there's just so much that needs to change. And of all industries, I think it's the one that needs the most help. There's so many bad legacy systems that are so fraught with administration, paperwork, human, that isn't got any technology, and there's some amazing businesses and startups coming to try and disrupt it, but they're just struggling to get in. So the more we team together and help each other, and the more working as a clinician and patient care, which is the aim of everything, becomes easier and better for everyone.
Nice. Haley, you're going to ask, there's a lot of shifts on your platform. Who's going to pick it?
Well, I was going to put the call out to locums.
Yes.
That's my own personal call out. But I think also just, if you're feeling disillusioned in where you're working, or if you're feeling disillusioned in the environment that you're in, or the industry area that you found yourself in, think it's worthwhile knowing there's options. And sometimes that when you have the conversations with other colleagues, you've got other job opportunities, you've got other workplace opportunities. One bad job doesn't equal a bad profession or a career. So I just encourage people to, try some other options. Come and locum with Hey Lucy, of course, but at the same time, taking up some other options, I think, is really important that people know it's okay. And if you're not surviving out there as a full-time clinician, you're not abnormal, and maybe it just means that you need to change up your work frequency, your work environment, or the type of work you're doing, and that's okay. I took a long time, 21 years, to work out that being a full-time practitioner wasn't really my calling, and that's okay. So I think if you're doing it tough out there, you're probably not the only one, so have a few conversations with some other colleagues.
Nicely said. Look, thank you all of you for the time, the honesty, the vulnerability of saying things that you wouldn't want to be saying, but also being authentic about your purpose and the greater good that you want to solve. So really appreciate you, all of you, in championing this, solving this problem, but also individually, each one taking a stab at the market segments that you're in and then disrupting it. These are some of the reasons why at My Geeksters Week it's really excited, right? We are super passionate about this space because we believe the world is changing and it's changing rapidly that we could actually catch up with. And enabling marketplaces such as yours seeming to be the only way that we could meet a lot of individual lives and try to change them for better. So for those who are thinking, Benji, what are you doing in this call? And you obviously didn't ask any question. You should come and check me out at our website, and that'll tell you what we do and why this call was. But look, always happy for you to reach out to me if you want to connect with these folks, and I'm happy to do a blurb, bring them on a call. We have a WhatsApp channel. If you're a marketplace builder like them, and you wanted to be part of the group, and you want to have a secret chat, and come reach out to me, and I will send you the private entry door with the secret code, so you can come and join the group. Other than that, stay tuned, because there's a lot of this conversation going to happen in the same topic. Maybe I'm going to call one of them in each episode or something. I wanted to deep dive because there's so many problems that I see that will take ages to uncover. So stay tuned. If you haven't touched on our episodes before, we are on Spotify, on your playlist. Go check the other episodes. You will see Serge in one of the episodes with Kavita, who's not here, Kavi, and talking about their origin story. So yeah, please go take a deep dive on what are the things that we have. And if you're hanging around, go like them and connect with them. And thank you so much for being part of the session.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for organizing, Benji.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Take care.